My mother's fingernails left scratch marks on the glass. I watched her claw at the kitchen door, the same door she'd locked 3 hours earlier to keep me hidden from her 4th of July guests. Her red lipstick was smeared across her teeth like a wound. Behind her, smoke rolled through our house in thick, dark waves, and somewhere beyond the haze, people were screaming. She locked eyes with me through that grimy garage window. Really saw me. Maybe for the first time since I'd dropped out of Dartmouth. Since I'd chosen vintage dresses over vineyard vines. Since I'd become the daughter she explained away instead of introduced. Her mouth formed words I couldn't hear over the chaos. Her palm pressed flat against the glass between us, and I pressed mine against the other side, separated by a barrier she'd created. The deadbolt, she'd turned herself. To protect her image. To hide her shame. Then someone pulled her away, and the smoke swallowed her whole. The thing about being locked in a garage while your family burns? You survive, and survival feels a hell of a lot like punishment. 6 hours earlier, I was singing along to Fleetwood Mac with the windows down, thinking the worst thing that could happen was another passive-aggressive comment about my life choices. Independence Day at the Harper House wasn't just a holiday. It was a referendum on success. My parents didn't throw parties, they staged productions. This year's cast list read like the social register of Riverside Estates. Congressman Peterson and his eligible son Drew. The Thorntons, who owned half the car dealerships in the county and all of the judgment. The Vanderbilts from the country club, where I'd been asked to resign my membership when I couldn't afford the dues anymore. Red, white, and blue bunting wrapped around our colonial, like the house was being strangled by patriotism. A rented white tent dominated the backyard. Inside, my mother, Susanne Harper, navy blazer, pearls, bob so perfect it could cut glass-directed caterers with the precision of a general planning an invasion. I stood in the kitchen doorway holding my famous loaded potato salad. The one thing I made that she never criticized. The one crumb of approval I still craved like an addict. Her eyes traveled over my vintage sundress, my thrifted cardigan, my canvas sneakers. The silence lasted 3 seconds. Might as well have been 3 hours. Susanne, we need to talk privately. I'd heard that tone before, when I'd left Dartmouth halfway through junior year, when I'd moved into the studio apartment above the coffee shop, when I'd shown up to Christmas with a poet boyfriend who didn't own a belt. But I'd never heard what came next. You'll be spending the party in the garage. Not near the garage. Not helping in the garage. In the garage. Like a car. Like a lawnmower. Like anything else you keep out of sight when company comes. The door locks from the inside, she said, already walking away. I'll come get you when everyone leaves. I should have thrown the potato salad at her perfect blonde head. Should have walked out. Should have said what I'd been swallowing for a decade. Instead, I whispered, okay, because part of me, the part that still checked my phone, hoping she'd texted, believed maybe I was the embarrassment she said I was. Maybe I did deserve to be hidden. Turns out, that lock she turned, it saved my life. And now I'm the only Harper left to wonder, if she'd known what was coming, would she have opened that door? Before we dive into how Susanne ended up locked in that garage while her family's perfect party turned into a nightmare, let me ask you something. Have you ever been made to feel invisible by the people who were supposed to love you? If this story is hitting close to home, hit that like button. Subscribe and turn on notifications, because we're about to unpack a 4th of July celebration that exposed the darkest corners of family dysfunction. Drop a comment, where are you watching from? And have you ever been the black sheep? The drive from my apartment to Riverside Estates takes exactly 23 minutes if you catch the lights right. I caught them all green, which should have felt like a good sign. Stevie Nicks was telling me I could go my own way, and I had the windows down because my Honda Civic's air conditioning died sometime during the Clinton administration, and I couldn't afford to fix it. The potato salad rode shotgun in its vintage Pyrex bowl, the pale yellow one with the daisy pattern that had belonged to my grandmother. Heavy on the bacon, light on the mayo, with just enough dill to make people wonder what the secret ingredient was. It was the one thing, the only thing, my mother never nitpicked. "Well, at least you can make a decent potato salad," she'd said once, and I'd clung to that compliment like a life raft for 3 years. Pathetic? Absolutely. But we work with what we've got. Riverside Estates announced itself the way it always did with judgment. The neighborhood entrance featured a fountain with an eagle that looked vaguely constipated and a sign proclaiming a community of excellence since 1987. Translation: if your car is more than 5 years old, the HOA is watching you. My parents' house sat on a corner lot, which meant twice the lawn to maintain and twice the opportunity to showcase their superiority. Today, it looked like Uncle Sam had a manic episode and exploded across the property. American flags lined both sides of the driveway like a presidential motorcade was expected. Red, white, and blue bunting strangled every surface: the porch railings, the mailbox, the poor dogwood tree that had never asked for this. A massive white tent dominated the backyard, its peaks visible over the roofline, probably costing more than I made in 3 months. I parked on the street. My Civic looked like a homeless person at a yacht club between a Mercedes and a Tesla. Inside, the house hummed with the kind of controlled chaos that comes with a price tag. Caterers in crisp white shirts moved through the kitchen like a synchronized swim team, carrying trays of shrimp the size of my fist and those little puff pastry things that taste like butter and regret. Someone had installed a sound system that was currently pumping Tom Petty through every room at the exact volume that suggested casual fun without being tacky. My mother stood at the center of it all like a conductor before an orchestra. Navy blazer despite the 90-degree heat, pearl necklace that probably cost more than my rent. Hair in that timeless blonde bob that hadn't changed length or style since 1994. Why mess with perfection when you've achieved optimal summer in the Hamptons aesthetic? The crudités go there, not there, she was saying to a terrified-looking girl who couldn't have been older than 20. And for God's sake, the ranch dip is supposed to be artfully rustic, not actually rustic. Fix the garnish. My father stood on the back patio, visible through the French doors. Richard Harper in his natural habitat, Ralph Lauren polo, pressed khakis, grilling tools in one hand, phone pressed to his ear with the other. Even on a national holiday, he couldn't stop working. Probably negotiating some merger while basting ribs. Multitasking was his love language. No, Jerry, I'm telling you the Henderson clause is going to be the sticking point, he said into the phone, jabbing a meat thermometer at an imaginary adversary. We need to hold on. He pressed mute. Diane, where's the applewood chips? Garage, bottom shelf, my mother shouted back, without missing a beat in her crudité crisis management. I stood in the doorway holding my potato salad like an offering to a temperamental god. That's when my phone buzzed. FaceTime. Victoria. I answered to see my little sister younger by 4 years, older by every measure that mattered to our parents in what was clearly a corner office in Manhattan. Floor-to-ceiling windows behind her, showcasing a view that probably cost more per month than most people's mortgages. "Suze! God, I feel terrible I'm missing it," Victoria said, not looking or sounding even remotely terrible. Her hair was in a sleek ponytail. Her blazer probably cost more than my car. "This Morgan Stanley deal is just insane right now. We're talking about restructuring the entire—" She stopped herself. "Anyway, you know how it is." I didn't know how it was. I'd never restructured anything more complicated than my work schedule to pick up an extra shift. "Tell Mom and Dad I love them," Victoria continued, "and that I'll make it home for Labor Day." "Promise." "Well, probably." "Okay, gotta run. Love you." The screen went dark before I could respond. Perfect Victoria, making all the right choices from her corner office in the sky. I set the potato salad down on the kitchen island. It looked humble next to the spread of prosciutto-wrapped melon and imported cheese that probably had names I couldn't pronounce. My mother turned, saw me. Her eyes traveled down my body with the efficiency of a TSA scanner, and about as much warmth. The vintage sundress I'd found at Goodwill for $12 mint green, with tiny embroidered flowers, practically unworn. The cream cardigan with the one small moth hole near the hem that you couldn't see unless you were looking for it. The canvas sneakers I'd had since college because they were still comfortable, and who cares? She cared. The silence lasted exactly 3 seconds but felt like 3 hours. "Susanne, we need to talk. Privately." The caterers suddenly found reasons to be very busy in other rooms. My father, still on his conference call, gave me a distracted wave through the window. He hadn't noticed my outfit yet. He probably wouldn't. Dad existed in a perpetual state of benign oblivion about anything that didn't involve quarterly earnings. "Sure, Mom," I said, picking up my potato salad bowl like a shield. "Should I put this in the fridge first, or—" "Leave it." The formal living room loomed ahead like an execution chamber. We'd had every major talk in that room. The Dartmouth conversation, the gap year that became permanent, the time I'd introduced them to Sebastian, the spoken word artist who'd lasted exactly 1 dinner before my mother's withering silence drove him back to Brooklyn. I followed her in, still holding the potato salad because I didn't know what else to do with my hands. She closed the door. "Congressman Peterson is bringing his son Drew." That was how she started. Not "how are you" or "thanks for coming" or even "nice dress." The trap was already closing. I just didn't know it yet. The formal living room hadn't changed since I was 8 years old and knocked over the Ming vase. Well, allegedly Ming. My mother claimed it was an antique worth thousands. My therapist back when I could afford therapy suggested it was probably from Home Goods, but that wasn't really the point, was it? The point was that I'd been clumsy, careless, destructive. The point was that some mistakes you never stop paying for. The vase had been replaced, of course. This one sat on the same pedestal, probably also from Home Goods, definitely treated like it came from a Chinese dynasty. My mother didn't sit. She stood with her back to the window, backlit like she was about to deliver a TED Talk on disappointment. "Congressman Peterson is bringing his son Drew," she said again, as if I'd missed it the first time. "The Thorntons are attending, you remember, Mrs. Thornton was on the board at Dartmouth when you left. Left. Not dropped out, not quit." Not fled in the middle of junior year because I'd had a complete breakdown over organic chemistry and the crushing realization that I was pursuing pre-med to please people who would never actually be pleased. Left like I'd simply forgotten to stay. Several clients from your father's firm will be here, she continued, ticking off on her fingers like she was making a grocery list. The Vandermeers, the Castellanos, Janet Hofstadter and her husband, he just made partner at some tech startup. Very successful. This is important for our image, Susanne. You understand that, don't you? I understand, I said, not understanding at all. I understood the words individually. Together they felt like a foreign language. No. Her voice dropped to that particular register that meant we were getting to the real point. The knife hidden in the birthday cake. I don't think you do. We've spent years explaining you to people. Explaining me, like I was a natural disaster or a problematic clause in a contract. Your choices. Your lifestyle. She said lifestyle the way someone might say criminal record. Last year, Congressman Peterson asked about you at the club, asked what you were doing with yourself. And I had to stand there and admit that you work at a coffee shop. It's a coffee house, I corrected reflexively, immediately regretting it. It's locally owned, we source ethically, with a degree halfway finished and no prospects. She rolled over my words like they were speed bumps. Do you know how that felt? Do you know what it's like to watch Mrs. Dead? Thornton's face when she asks about your daughters, and I have to say Victoria is doing mergers at Morgan Stanley, and you're steaming milk? The potato salad was getting heavy. My arms ached. I wanted to set it down, but there was nowhere to put it in this room. Everything was too valuable, too pristine, too likely to be my fault if I damaged it. I'm sorry, I heard myself say. The old reflex. Apologize first, process later. I've made arrangements, my mother said, and something in her tone made my stomach drop. The detached garage. It's clean your father was organizing last week. There's a mini fridge out there. I put in some water bottles. The camping chair from our last well, from when we used to camp. Before I ruined that too, apparently. We'd gone camping exactly once when I was 12. I'd gotten poison ivy and complained so much we'd left early. Victoria had been furious at me. Story of my life. I need you to spend the party out there. The words hung in the air like smoke. For a second, I thought I'd misheard, that she'd said something else. Something that made sense. In the garage? Just for the party. A few hours. You can bring your phone, listen to music with headphones, read a book. You love reading, don't you? She said it like she was offering me a spa day, a special treat. You want me to sit in the garage during your party. Our party. Your father's and mine. Yes. She smoothed her blazer, a gesture that meant the discussion was over. I've already locked the door from the inside, the one that connects to the kitchen, for privacy. I'll come get you when everyone leaves. The room tilted slightly. Or maybe I did. Mom, you can't be serious. Congressman Peterson specifically mentioned wanting Drew to meet successful young people. The Thorntons are considering investing in several of Richard's clients. Janet Hofstadter's husband is looking at the Henderson portfolio. Do you see what I'm saying? This isn't just a party, Susanne. This is business. This is our reputation. And I'm bad for business. I didn't say that. You didn't have to. She sighed, and for just a second, maybe half a second, something flickered across her face that might have been guilt Or indigestion. Hard to tell with Diane Harper. Please, she said, and the please was somehow worse than everything else. It made it a request. A favor I could choose to grant. Just this once. Just today. Make this easy for me. I should have thrown the potato salad at her. Should have walked out the front door and never looked back. Should have said what I'd been swallowing for 10 years. That she was cruel, that she'd made me feel like a mistake my entire adult life. That no amount of polo shirts and stock portfolios would fill whatever hole existed in her where maternal love was supposed to be. Instead, I thought about the Dartmouth tuition they'd paid before I left, the money I still technically owed them, even though they'd never asked for it back. The studio apartment I could barely afford. The fact that Sebastian the poet had been right when he'd said, "You're never going to be free of them until you stop believing you owe them something." Maybe I was an embarrassment. Maybe I had wasted their money and their time and their hopes. Maybe this was what I deserved. The guilt rose up like bile. "Okay," I whispered. My mother's shoulders dropped in visible relief. "Thank you, truly. This means thank you." She was already moving toward the door, already mentally back in the kitchen, directing caterers and arranging crudités. The garage door should be unlocked from the outside. "I'll come get you around 9. After the fireworks." She paused in the doorway, not quite looking at me. "The potato salad looks lovely, by the way." Then she was gone, and I was standing alone in the formal living room, holding my one successful dish next to a fake Ming vase that I'd been paying for my whole life. The garage was 92 degrees if it was a degree, maybe hotter, the kind of heat that sits on your chest like a living thing and makes breathing feel like work. It smelled like motor oil, grass clippings, and the particular scent of disappointment that only a Harper family gathering could produce. The camping chair my mother had mentioned sat wedged between my father's immaculate workbench tools organized by size and function like a serial killer's lair and a stack of cardboard boxes. I wouldn't have noticed the labels if I hadn't been looking for somewhere to sit that wouldn't give me tetanus. Susanne Childhood Donate. Not one box, 3 boxes. All labeled identically in my mother's pristine handwriting, the kind they probably taught at finishing schools before finishing schools realized they were obsolete. I sat down in the camping chair. It wheezed under my weight, the fabric sun-faded and stretched. The last time anyone had used this chair, I'd been 12 and complained so much about mosquitoes that we'd packed up early from Lake Wallen-Paupack. Victoria had called me a baby the entire drive home. My mother had agreed with her silence. The boxes stared at me like an accusation. "Don't open them," I thought. "Nothing good comes from archaeological digs through your own past." I opened them. The first box contained my Harry Potter collection, the original American editions with the covers I'd memorized. The corners were bent from when I'd read them by flashlight under my covers, staying up until 2 in the morning because Hogwarts felt more real than Riverside Estates. There were annotations in the margins in my teenage handwriting. I relate to this so much next to a passage about not fitting in. God, I'd been obvious even then. A stuffed elephant sat on top of the books. Liberty. I'd named her Liberty because I'd gotten her on a 4th grade field trip to Philadelphia, and I'd thought I was being incredibly clever. She was gray and worn, one ear hanging by threads, the spot on her head rubbed smooth from where I used to hold her when I couldn't sleep. Donate. All of it. Erased. The second box held my high school debate trophy, 2nd place, regional competition. I'd spent 6 months preparing, memorizing arguments about environmental policy, practicing my rebuttals until I could deliver them in my sleep. My father had come to the final round, sat in the back row, and left during deliberations for a conference call. My mother had said, "Second place is good, sweetheart, but imagine if you'd gotten first." I'd never competed again. There were yearbooks in there, too, still in their plastic shrink wrap. I'd never opened them because I hadn't wanted to see what people wrote. Or worse, to find out they hadn't written anything at all. From inside the house, music started pumping. John Mellencamp's Small Town, because nothing says authentic American celebration like a millionaire singing about blue-collar nostalgia. The bass line vibrated through the walls. Then laughter, the kind that comes with expensive wine and the security of knowing your 401k is performing well. I found the window. Small, grimy, probably hadn't been cleaned since the Bush administration. Either Bush? I used the sleeve of my cardigan to wipe away years of accumulated dirt, instantly regretting it when I saw the brown smear left behind. But I could see through it now. The window looked directly into the kitchen and partially into the great room beyond. A perfect frame, a perfect view of everything I was missing, everything I wasn't good enough to attend. My mother moved through the crowd like a ballerina, all grace and precision. Air kisses for Mrs. Vandermeer, a hand on Congressman Peterson's arm, laughing at something he said. She was in her element, the queen surveying her kingdom. Someone handed her a glass of champagne. She raised it in a toast I couldn't hear. Through the kitchen window, I could see the back patio. My father stood at his massive grill, the kind that cost more than some people's cars, beer in one hand, tongs in the other, surrounded by men in pastel polo shirts. They all looked the same, like someone had ordered them in bulk from a catalog called Successful White Men Who Peak at Golf. Someone was giving a speech. I couldn't hear the words, but I could see mouths moving, heads nodding. Everyone raised their glasses. The amber liquid caught the late afternoon sun. Nobody looked toward the garage. Nobody noticed the empty spot where a daughter should be. I felt the tears before I could stop them, hot and furious and humiliating. I wiped at them angrily with the back of my hand, which was already dirty from the window, so now I probably had a dirt mustache to go with my exile. Perfect. Really nailing the disappointment daughter aesthetic. I should leave. Just stand up, walk out the garage door, get in my car and drive away. Flip them all off in my rearview mirror. Post something cryptic and devastating on social media that would make my mother clutch her pearls. Except, my car keys were in my purse. My purse was in the kitchen. The kitchen was inside the locked house where I wasn't allowed to exist. And even if I could leave, where would I go? Back to my studio apartment that smelled like coffee beans and had a bathroom so small you had to step into the shower to close the door. Back to my life that my mother had just confirmed was exactly as pathetic as I'd feared. At least here, I had a front row seat to everything I wasn't. Through the window, Victoria appeared on someone's phone screen, probably FaceTiming in from her corner office. I watched my mother's face light up, watched her show the phone around to guests. "That's my daughter Victoria. She's doing mergers at Morgan Stanley. So successful. We're so proud." Daughter. Singular. I sat in the camping chair surrounded by boxes of my childhood marked for donation, and I did the math. If the party started at 5 and people usually stayed through fireworks around 9:30, that was 4.5 hours, 270 minutes. 16,200 seconds of sitting in a sweltering garage while my family pretended I didn't exist. The really pathetic part? I was going to do it. Because maybe my mother was right. Maybe I was an embarrassment. Maybe this was exactly what I deserved. Liberty the elephant stared at me from her box with her one remaining button eye, and I swear to God she looked disappointed too. The explosion wasn't like the movies. There was no giant fireball, no dramatic blast that sent debris flying in slow motion while a hero dove for cover. It was a deep, thunderous boom that I felt in my chest before I heard it, like the earth itself had coughed. The kind of sound that stops time and restarts it wrong. The windows of the house rattled in their frames. The grimy garage window I'd been staring through for 3 hours shook so hard I thought it might shatter. Then the car alarms started. Up and down Riverside Estates, security systems shrieked to life in a cacophony of panic. The Vandermeers' Mercedes, the Castellanos' Lexus, my own pathetic Civic adding its voice to the chorus. Then the screaming started, human screaming. I lunged to the window, pressing my face against the glass I'd cleaned with my cardigan sleeve. The great room was filled with smoke, thick, black, roiling smoke that moved like something alive. Flames licked up the walls, orange and hungry, consuming the wallpaper my mother had special ordered from some boutique in Charleston. The white tent in the backyard was already catching, the fabric curling black at the edges. People stampeded. That's the only word for it. Stampeded like animals fleeing a predator, all that country club civility evaporating in an instant. They poured toward the exits, the front door, the back patio, anywhere that led away from the heat and smoke. I saw Congressman Peterson shoving past Mrs. Vandermeer, saw someone trip and go down, others stepping over them without stopping. My father appeared in the kitchen doorway, his polo shirt torn at the collar, soot already streaking his face. He was shouting something, trying to organize the evacuation, playing crisis manager the way he played everything else. But nobody was listening. Survival doesn't follow a corporate hierarchy. Then I saw my mother. Susanne Harper emerged from the smoke like a ghost, her navy blazer askew, her perfect blonde bob wild around her face. Her pearls were gone, ripped off, or melted, I couldn't tell. Her eyes were wide, feral, searching. She lunged for the kitchen door, the door that led to the garage. The door she'd locked from the inside 3 hours ago to keep me contained, keep me hidden, keep me from embarrassing her in front of people who were currently trampling each other to escape. Her perfectly manicured nails, the ones she got done every Tuesday at the salon she'd been going to for 15 years, scrabbled at the deadbolt, clawing, frantic. Her red lipstick was smeared across her teeth like blood. Behind her, the smoke was getting thicker, rolling across the ceiling in dark waves. Someone stumbled past her, coughing. The flames were spreading faster now, feeding on something I couldn't see. I pounded on the garage window with both fists. "Mom! Mom!" She turned. Our eyes locked through the glass. For one eternal moment, maybe 1 second, maybe an hour, time had stopped making sense. I saw my mother really see me. Not the disappointment daughter, not the embarrassment, not the problem to be solved or hidden away. Just me, Susanne, her daughter. Her face transformed. Recognition crashed into horror, crashed into understanding. The full weight of what she'd done locking me out here, keeping me separate, the door that now stood between us hit her like a physical blow. Her mouth moved. I couldn't hear the words through the glass and the chaos. but I could read lips well enough. Either I'm sorry or help me. Maybe both, maybe neither. Maybe just the shape of my name. Then someone grabbed her from behind a man in a torn polo shirt, maybe Mr. Castellano, and pulled her away from the door, away from me, toward the front exit where people were still pouring out onto the lawn. She fought him for a second. I saw her twist, reach back toward the garage door, toward me. Then the smoke swallowed them both, and she was gone. The kitchen filled with black smoke so thick I couldn't see anything anymore, just dark gray roiling against the windows, and somewhere beyond it, the orange glow of flames. The garage was filling with smoke, too. I could feel it now, seeping under the door that connected to the house, creeping along the floor like fog. The boxes marked Susanne Childhood Donate were already disappearing into the haze. The smell hit me acrid, chemical, wrong, not just wood smoke, something else, plastic, propane, paint thinner, all the flammable things people store in garages because they're too dangerous to keep in houses. My throat closed. I couldn't breathe, couldn't think. The air was turning to poison. My father's workbench. Tools organized with serial killer precision. I grabbed a hammer, the big one, the framing hammer he used for serious work, and swung it at the exterior window. The glass exploded outward in a shower of glittering shards that caught the late afternoon sun like fireworks. Like celebration. Like the 4th of July we'd all been promised. I didn't feel the glass slice my hand until I was already hauling myself through the frame, already pulling my body through the opening, already falling forward onto the driveway outside. The concrete hit my knees hard enough to bring tears to my eyes. Or maybe I was already crying. Hard to tell with the smoke and the shock and the blood now running down my palm in bright red rivulets. Sirens wailed in the distance, getting closer. Fire trucks, plural. Someone had called 911 fast. I crawled forward on my hands and knees, away from the garage, away from the house, away from the heat at my back. When I finally looked up, the first fire truck was rounding the corner onto Oakmont Drive, lights flashing red and white against the smoke-darkened sky. Behind me, the Harper house burned, and somewhere in that smoke and chaos and flame, my mother was trying to find an exit that didn't lead to the daughter she'd locked away. The thermal blanket crackled when they wrapped it around my shoulders. Silver foil, the kind that makes you look like a baked potato, like you're about to be served at a picnic. It was still 85 degrees, maybe hotter, the kind of July night where the heat sits on your skin like oil. But I was shaking anyway, so I guess the paramedics knew what they were doing. A woman with kind eyes and a nose ring bandaged my hand. The cut wasn't as bad as it looked. Glass cuts never are. All that blood from shallow wounds. She worked in silence, efficient and gentle, while around us the organized chaos of emergency response played out like a choreographed dance. Fire trucks, ambulances, police cars. All the vehicles you never want to see in your driveway. "You're going to be fine," she said, which was either a lie or the truth depending on how you defined fine. A police officer approached. Young, maybe 25, with that fresh from the academy eagerness that hadn't been beaten out of him yet by years of witnessing human misery. His nameplate said Rodriguez. "Miss Harper, I need to ask you a few questions if you're up for it." I nodded because what else was I going to do? "You were in the garage when the explosion occurred?" "The detached garage?" "Yes." "The whole time? During the party?" "Yes." He wrote something in his notebook, frowning. Can I ask? Why? The question I'd been dreading. The question that made the truth sound insane. My mother asked me to stay there. He looked up from his notebook, waited for more. When I didn't continue, he prompted, She asked you to stay in the garage? During a party? Yes. Was there a reason for that? Where do you even start? How do you explain a lifetime of disappointment in a sentence that makes sense to a stranger? I was an embarrassment, I said flatly. The outfit was wrong, the career was wrong, the whole daughter was wrong, so she locked me in the garage so her guests wouldn't have to see me. Rodriguez's pen stopped moving. He looked at me like he was trying to determine if I was in shock or telling the truth. Probably both. The house behind us was a gutted shell. The fire department had contained it. They're good at their jobs in neighborhoods like Riverside Estates, where the tax base funds, state-of-the-art equipment, but contained, didn't mean saved. The roof was partially collapsed. The windows were blown out, black scorch marks reaching up the colonial facade like fingers. The tent in the backyard was gone, just melted puddles of white plastic and metal framework twisted into modern art. 17 people had been inside when the propane ignited. I'd learned that from the paramedics talking in low voices they thought I couldn't hear. 14 made it out. 3 didn't. Richard Harper, age 61, massive heart attack during the evacuation, likely triggered by smoke inhalation and the stress of watching his perfect party turn into a nightmare. They'd tried to revive him on the front lawn. It hadn't worked. Diane Harper, age 58, severe smoke inhalation. She'd made it outside but collapsed on the driveway. The ambulance had rushed her to County General with sirens blaring, but she'd stopped breathing somewhere on Route 202, DOA. Dead on arrival. The acronym that turns a person into paperwork. Gerald Thornton, age 63. Struck his head falling down the stairs during the evacuation. Never regained consciousness. Mrs. Thornton, the woman who'd been on the Dartmouth board when I'd left, was at the hospital with him now. They were saying brain death, saying difficult decisions ahead. The others would recover. Smoke inhalation, burns, broken bones from the stampede, trauma that would require therapy and medication and years of processing, but they'd live. Congressman Peterson had been giving a toast on the back patio when it happened, far enough from the house to escape unscathed. He was already releasing statements through his PR team, thoughts and prayers, better safety regulations, tragedy that brings communities together. He'd probably find a way to use this in his next campaign. Never waste a good crisis. I sat on the back of an ambulance at 11 p.m., watching firefighters spray water on what was left of my childhood. The streams caught the light from their trucks, creating rainbows in the smoke. Pretty! If you didn't think about what was burning. The sky above exploded with fireworks. For a second, I thought I was hallucinating. Then I realized it was the neighboring county's display, the big municipal show they did every year from the high school football field. Brilliant reds, whites, and blues bursting against the dark. Celebration continuing around tragedy, because that's what America does. The show must go on. The party doesn't stop just because people died. Someone had forgotten to cancel the Harper's private fireworks show, but apparently the pyrotechnics company had decided not to light them given the circumstances. Small mercies. Detective Walsh approached next, older than Rodriguez, with the kind of weathered face that said he'd seen everything and wasn't impressed by any of it. He had a notebook, too. They all had notebooks. Miss Harper, I'm very sorry for your loss. The script they all learned at the academy. I do need to ask, when we arrived, the door between the garage and the kitchen was locked from the inside. There's no exterior exit from the garage that we can see except the broken window you escaped through. Were you? He paused, choosing his words carefully. Were you locked in there? I started laughing. I couldn't help it. It bubbled up from somewhere dark and broken and wrong, spilling out of me like the smoke still pouring from the house. I laughed until my ribs hurt, until the paramedic with the nose ring looked concerned, until Detective Walsh took a step back like maybe I was dangerous. Then I was crying. Or maybe I'd been crying the whole time and the laughing was just a different flavor of the same breakdown. My mother locked me in the garage, I said when I could speak again, because I was an embarrassment, because I dropped out of Dartmouth, because I work at a coffee shop, because I wear secondhand clothes from Goodwill and don't have an investment portfolio, because Congressman Peterson was bringing his eligible son and the Thorntons were attending, and I would have ruined the aesthetic. Detective Walsh wrote nothing, just stared. She locked me in there so her friends wouldn't have to see me, so she wouldn't have to explain me. The black sheep, the disappointment daughter, the cautionary tale about wasted potential. My voice had gone flat, empty, like I was reading a grocery list. The thing is, I continued, looking up at the fireworks still exploding overhead in patriotic celebration, that lock, it saved my life. She humiliated me. She erased me. She locked me away like I was trash she didn't want the neighbors to see, and it saved my life. In the distance, the finale started. Rapid-fire bursts of red, white, and blue, the grand climax of Independence Day. Freedom, liberty, the American dream. I sat wrapped in foil, covered in ash and soot and the blood from my cut hand, the last Harper standing. Finally visible, finally unavoidable, finally free from the people who'd spent my whole life wishing I was someone else. And it felt exactly like drowning. Detective Walsh closed his notebook. Miss Harper, is there anyone we can call for you? Family? Friends? I thought about Victoria in her Manhattan office. Perfect Victoria who'd made all the right choices. Who was about to get a phone call that would shatter her world? My sister, I whispered. Someone should call my sister. Above us, the fireworks died. The smoke drifted. The celebration ended. And I was alone. Diane Harper wanted her daughter invisible. And that cruelty became Susanne's salvation. Sometimes the people who hurt us the most accidentally save us. If this story got to you, if you've ever survived the family that was supposed to protect you, drop a comment with your thoughts. Have you experienced anything like this? Hit subscribe for more stories about survival, family dysfunction, and the complicated truth that sometimes freedom looks like tragedy. Where are you watching from tonight?